Hello and welcome to the Collecting Heroes podcast. I'm your host JD, and this is the podcast where I talk to pop culture collectors from around the world. And today we're going full speed, and by full speed I mean all the way to 88 miles per hour, because my guest today, his name is Andy Strano, and he is from Minnesota, and obviously 88 miles per hour has to be a Back to
There
the
you
Future
go.
collector. So Andy, thank you
I
for being
must
on the
be.
show.
Thank you for having me.
Well, Andy, we were talking briefly beforehand. I always sort of have a bit of a conversation beforehand, and I was explaining that, one of the things I love to do is obviously get the history of you as a collector. I first saw your collection on a video from a channel called Matt's Rad Show, I believe it is, on YouTube. I actually saw this when I first started researching for the podcast and sort of looking at different collectors from around the world. I was like, who could I interview? Yours was one of the first collections that I actually saw when I was looking through YouTube.
Oh,
And
okay, cool.
that was on that video, which is, the video is about 4 years old, but I think it was 2020, late 2020 when I first saw it. So, more than a year and a half ago. But still a really cool collection that I've actually watched that video a couple of times and enjoyed it. And I reached out to you, and thankfully you were able to be on the show. So tell people a bit about this collection, because this is a fantastic Back to the Future collection. How did this collection come to be, and how did you become to be a fan of Back to the Future as well?
Sure. Well, I'd say I saw the movie when I was about 10, and I said, I obviously fell in love with the time machine.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, I'm going to own one of those cars someday, and just like in the movie, if you put your mind to it, you could accomplish anything. So eventually I got myself a DeLorean, and I met some people, and the guy that helped me eventually build the thing. I used to live in Las Vegas. Let me back up. I used to live in Las Vegas. I moved out there from Pennsylvania, and through trying to rent the car out for events like birthdays and things like that, I met a prop builder, and him and I came together and spent a few months trying to make it look more movie accurate. And through that, and I've always collected toys. I've always liked just Back to the Future, everything, that kind of thing. So I've been collecting, here and there throughout my life since I've seen the movie. One of my first pieces was when I went to Universal Studios, probably when I was about 12 or 13. And I still have that piece. It was a model that I built.
Nice. Of the DeLorean?
Of the DeLorean, yes.
Cool.
Obviously, I love Doc, Marty, the whole gang, but the time machine, in my opinion, is the main attraction for all the movies. So anyway, so fast forward, I got to, finally get this car looking like something out of the movie. It was, I bought it stock by itself with no lights and all that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And one of my first builds was I just got what I had around the house, pool hoses and all these weird things, and I just put it on the car to try to make it look like a quote unquote time machine, but nothing close to what I have now. And then as far as the collection, obviously it was like, well, I guess I own a DeLorean. So now I got to start to really, like, I had to up my collecting game kind of thing, So I kind of made it a habit of, when you go to Walmart or wherever you go, I'm always going to the Hot Wheels section, just kind of browsing and, oh, look, Back to the Future this and Back to the Future that. And so slowly started connecting. Grabbing as much as I could without trying to, put myself into lots and lots of debt, because that's the other thing as a collector. You have to know when to slow down, and like you measure how much house you have versus how much stuff you have.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And then fast forward, I moved here to Minnesota from Las Vegas and met the local DeLorean club, and they kind of noticed that I was a bit more of a Back to the Future fan than I was just a DeLorean fan, And in this world that I'm in, the DeLorean world, there is a big difference. You can be both, but there are DeLorean people out there that aren't huge Back to the Future people, which is awkward for me. It's very strange, because I thought, how do you own a DeLorean and not connect to the movie? Because everywhere you go with a real DeLorean, people are going to ask you, how fast does it go? Or if something's broken, they ask you, well, maybe it's your flux capacitor, and all these things. I've heard every joke under the sun kind of thing. So, but when I moved here, met the club, and one of the guys in the club was selling his car as well as his collection. And I don't know if you've ever been in the right place at the right time, but he was a collector and he just said, I don't want my stuff anymore. So, I contacted him and said, hey, so and so told me that I should come over and check out your stuff. And he said, yeah, come on over. I'm moving and I don't want to, I sold the car already and I just want to get out of this world. And it was, I told him, I said, well, I went over and I was just, my mouth was open,
And
and
you
he
already
saw
got
how
the
much of
car.
a, well, I had the car. Well, no, he already sold the car.
But I'm saying
Um,
you already had a car at that point though,
I
right?
already had
Like,
the car
so
and
you
I
didn't
already
need
had my,
need that.
my stash. I already had my Back to the Future stash.
Yeah.
But meeting this guy, he basically said, he saw my passion, and I said, here's how much money I have. I know this doesn't come close to this collection because you've got some great stuff. He got in the habit of, when he would buy something, for example, he would buy it in pairs, one to show and one to keep in the box,
Uh-huh.
that
Uh-huh.
kind of thing. So
Yes.
everything he had was, it really wasn't in pairs. It was doubles and triples or I mean, it was triples and quadruples and all this. It was crazy. So yeah, we just basically, I made him a deal and I said, I promise this is going to good hands,
Mhm.
so he gave me just tubs of stuff. And from that, I didn't want to just keep it in boxes. I wanted it to make it a display that sits with my car, you know. So that's when I started. So what you saw in Matt's Rad Show was the whole collection that I put on shelves and things like that in the garage that
Yeah.
was displayed with the car.
Yeah.
So that through my side business, when I do rentals for, the DeLorean and stuff, sometimes people will say, "Oh, please, we want you to bring the car up to our birthday party or something," and 3 hours away, and it's like, I don't want to drive that far. You're not going to be able to pay for gas and all that kind of stuff. So I was just, why don't you just surprise your husband, 40th birthday party, whatever it is, by coming to my house and show them the DeLorean time machine plus all the toys and stuff. And I've
Okay.
done that multiple times. Well, someone will show up not knowing what they're about to see. Maybe the wife contacted me through my website or something, and I'll tell them, just tell them that you found something on Facebook Marketplace and you need somebody to come with you. And so I'll tell the wife or whatever, text me when he's standing outside of the garage, and that's kind of what the video was like in Matt's Rad Show.
Yeah.
I hit the fog machine and I play the Huey Lewis, the machine, the garage door goes up and it's like, I thought we were here to buy a couch, and all of a sudden he sees this huge collection of just, I don't know what I have, but it's a lot. So, um, it's
That's
been
really
fun
cool.
though. But like I said, I was in the right place at the right time to kind of inherit this collection. And then from that, I kept buying more stuff. People would say,
Yeah.
"Oh, Andy, you need this and you need that." So with the 35th anniversary coming out 2 years ago, there was a lots of Back to the Future toys that were released, and of course, it almost becomes a little bit of an addiction. But you just have to be careful of, anytime I went somewhere, it's like, well, I need that, and I need that, and I need that, and I need that, um, and people would see stuff, and they'd be like, "Oh, Andy would love this," and get me Christmas presents. But I'm a very simple person to buy for birthday, Christmas. If it's Back to the Future, sure, yes, I want it. Bring it to me.
Yeah, no,
So
I'm the same. Obviously, most people know if you're going to get him something Batman. But at the
anything
same
Batman,
time,
yeah,
it's also that case of sometimes they're like, well, you seem like you've got everything Batman already. Like we don't know if we buy you something if you're going to already have it. So
it's okay. Buy it for me anyway. I
yeah.
only have two of those. I want three.
Or I'll make a little wish list like, hey, well, actually, I saw this was released recently and I haven't picked it up. So if you want to pick that up, that'd be great.
Sure.
Actually, it's funny that you're talking about like the 35th anniversary because just before we started recording, you mentioned something. It's July 4th here in Australia, but due to time zones, it's
July,
July 3rd
yep,
where you are right
July
now.
3rd, 1985 is when Back to the Future 1 was released in the theater. So it's
So
kind of neat to scroll through my, friend list on social media, and everybody's, happy birthday, Back to the Future. So
that's
it's kind of
really
neat
great
that we're
timing.
doing this today. So that's kind of cool.
That is very cool. Talk about so you call it the museum, and like obviously that'd be really cool for people rocking up and first being like, why are we driving an hour to get something off Facebook Marketplace? This better be something good, you
Sure.
know. Like, we're
Yeah.
rocking up
Yeah.
outside someone's random house, like, where the hell are we? um, so with the museum, how do you go? How did you go about setting that up? Did you have like, being that you're going to have people there showing it off? Did you have a specific style that you laid it out in?
I've noticed, I mean, it's a lot about presentation. You know, you put your toys out with
Hmm.
some shelves and stuff, but you throw a fog machine in there and some blue lights and some red lights, and people love that, you know,
Hmm.
and you get the boom box that's playing Huey Lewis. You know, it's an experience. I've always tried to kind of sell it that way. Like you're not just coming to go check out a few cool collectibles, but you're experiencing someone's passion, someone's, you know, the fact that I geek out over these kind of things, and it's really
Yeah.
great to geek out with other people. And a lot of times, if someone does come, let's say, you know, I've done this a few times with, you know, it's a well, my 7-year-old loves Back to the Future. Could we come check out your car and stuff? And I have a billion Hot Wheels of DeLoreans, and
Yeah.
I always it's like a wall that I've made. And after the experience is over, I look at the kid and say, "Now you're going to go home with a DeLorean," and I let them choose a Hot Wheel and stuff. And
That's
some
awesome.
collectors have told me that I'm dumb for that because I think these go for a lot more than a 99 cents is what I bought them for, you know,
Not
but
dumb at
I
all.
don't care. I mean, it's kind of neat it would have been cool if as a kid, and I saw that, and then the owner said, "Here you go, kid," you know, because you never know how you're going to affect someone's future. You know, in
Yeah.
20, 25 years, that kid could come back and say, you know, "Yeah, I remember." In fact, there was a story years ago. I gave a kid that car, and he came, I believe, with his dad. And then years later, I want to say the aunt, somebody in the family contacted me. It was kind of a heart-wrenching story, but someone in the family contacted me and said, "You have no idea how much that meant," because I guess the dad got cancer or something like that. And
Oh.
that car was the little boy's connection to, you know what I mean? And it was
Oh
like,
wow.
holy crap, I had no, you never know. You never know how you're going to come off, you know, how that's going to affect. So that little car was his little connection to his dad when he came to see me. It was something like that. And it was like, I read that message and, you know, I'm bawling, of course, because it's
Yeah.
like, I just gave him a car, you know, but it's neat because the cool thing about Back to the Future is it brings adults back to their childhood, you
Yes.
know, and with my own kids, they connect that way. You know, I have 3 boys and they haven't fully watched Back to the Future, but they know it. And they don't call it the DeLorean, they call it the data car because it's dad's car. And they know, they see my toys and they know that they're not, you know, they have their toys and my toys kind of thing. But it's such a neat movie that connects generations throughout time. You know, it's
Yeah.
kind of a real time machine kind of movie. So
That exactly, and it's funny because I obviously remember going and seeing it when I was a kid as well. I can't remember if I actually saw the first one in the cinemas. I think that may have been like a VHS, seeing that,
sure,
or on TV. Um, but I definitely know that I went and saw the second and the third one in the cinemas. I do remember those experiences and going and seeing those, and how much I loved them, and still love them to this day. I could still sit down and watch them to this day. Absolutely fantastic movies.
sure. They're really movies that they do stand the test of time. You know,
Yes.
you don't watch it today and like, oh, that's cheesy or that's stupid or that doesn't, you know, and through with the car, I've done movie nights, like movies in the park. I don't know if you guys have that, but let's
Okay.
say a community will put on a movie for the public.
Yep. Yep.
Um, and I remember one of my first experiences was because I can quote the movie backwards and forwards, like I'm sure you can with Batman. But watching the movie with 300 or 400 other people that have never seen the movie and they laugh at the jokes, and that is the coolest experience because it's like you're reliving the experience over again. You know, when
Yeah.
people are
Yeah.
and it's like,
And
well,
that
it's
shared
kind of a cool
experience
thing.
is amazing that you can have that not only through your DeLorean rental that you do, but also having your home museum where your collection lies, and sharing that with people, and then all these other experiences. What's probably the oddest, like talking about the rental? What's the oddest place you've
Okay.
ever had to go, or the oddest event you've ever had to go to for the rental?
Oh boy.
Do you have any funny stories for that?
Well, I had, I believe it was last summer. I can't remember exactly when. Maybe it was 2 summers ago. I had a couple show up, and he asked her to marry her. Yeah, I got the pronouns right. He asked her to marry her with my car there, and this was when I had my TARDIS. Um, the I have this is my second TARDIS, but I had the TARDIS parked out, or not parked, but it was outside of the house. So the experience, he came down and she wanted to see the car. You know, they're big Back to the Future fans and that kind of stuff. And he planned it with me. And they got engaged on my front lawn, and then they did photographs. And there's a really cool picture of them holding hands with their hand on the stick shift with her ring, and then the time circuits in the background, and
Oh,
then the
that's cool.
date. So
That's
that
really
was
cool.
pretty neat. And it's like, wow, this hunk of junk. I mean, some people will just look at it as a hunk of junk, but it's important to some people, that kind of thing. So
Mm,
that was a really cool thing. Oddities, I can't think of anything on offhand. Well, there was a church. It was about 2 years ago that had me come up and have the car parked out front and stuff. Well, the pastor was young. He was the one who wanted me to come up. He was young. He was into pop culture,
yeah,
the whole deal. He was geeking out when I showed up. Well,
cool.
his what's the word? His Not his audience. The church people. They
Yeah.
were in their 80s. I mean, these people were, they were walking up with little, they look at this thing that, I mean, I had my smoke machine on, and it's shooting out smoke, and they're just looking at one old
Huey
man in a
Lewis
black.
like blaring out of the
Yeah,
car and everything.
they didn't get it. They did not get it. And I mean, I remember one old man, and plus I think I was doing Doc Brown too, because a lot of times when I do events, I'll also cosplay as Doc, and
Nice.
I love messing with people. You got to mess with people. So, I had this one old man. He was almost angry. Like, what is this thing? What is this thing? Smoking and all that. And I just kind of was like, your pastor wanted me to come up here. Don't take it out on me, buddy. That kind of thing. But as Doc Brown, don't touch that. Everything's electrical. And I was just, I don't know. That was a fun gig.
Going back to the collection, when you purchased the collection, was there any particular item that stood out when you first looked at the collection? Like, I have to have it because of this particular item, this one thing.
One of the things. Now, this wasn't through the big steal that I got, but one of my friends. That's the other cool thing. Once you get a collection, people start finding things, in the wild. And they're like, "Oh, Andy would love this," and they send it to me.
Mhm.
Well, a friend of mine sent me a whole bunch of not Hot Wheels. McDonald's did what are the not Hot Wheels? What am I called?
Happy
Kids
Meal,
meals,
Happy
Happy
Meal, sorry.
Meals,
Yeah.
and I have a bunch of actual cardboard Happy Meal, Back to the Future themed Happy Meals, and I think that's pretty neat because I remember when those were actually coming out. As a kid, going to McDonald's and getting the little. They had, what did they have? Marty on a hoverboard, and then they had the dog in a train,
Einstein.
and they had a little yeah, Einstein, and then they also had Doc in a little DeLorean, and it was those kind that had wheels that if
Oh,
you
you
would
pulled them
race it
back.
real fast, little yes, and if you did them real fast, it would create sparks.
Oh yes, yeah, yeah. No, yeah.
I don't think they make those kind of toys anymore, because I would imagine they're a bit fire starters. But I remember as a kid having those, and now I mean I never kept I don't know why I wouldn't have kept them, but now I have the actual or the Happy Meals.
I actually have a lot
Um,
of things like that from Happy Meals from my childhood as well, from the different Batman movies. Some things that I've lost over time, or maybe thrown out as I was moving when in my younger years,
mhm.
during my 20s and everything, and I wasn't really collecting on the same sort of scope that I am now. So some things I'm trying to
Yes.
get back because I have those memories of collecting those things. One of the things I do have is the set of so Batman Forever. They actually came out with these glasses. their molded glasses that they did
I remember
for
the
that, and they've got
glasses.
Batman, Robin,
They were
Two
mugs, weren't
Face,
they?
and yeah, Riddler. Yeah, correct. Yeah,
The
they're like little
mugs.
mugs. Yeah,
Yes, I remember
yeah.
those.
And so I've got the full set of those. I've actually got multiple sets that I bought off eBay. I had a couple of the original ones that I got as a child. I think I would have been a teenager when they came out, and then I have full sets that I bought. I bought a lot off eBay of 3 full sets of those, and I've got some set aside as spares, and then I've got the other
Sure.
ones that I use on a regular basis around the house, and I love them. I just love seeing them, and
Okay.
they're now. Well, that's what's that now? 1995, so 27 years. 27 years
Okay.
like ago that
Yeah.
those came out. So no, I love those. Another thing with your collection, because you said you've had version 1 and version 2, how do they vary now in the way that you've set up version 1 and version 2 of those?
So, yeah, so what you saw in Matt's Rad Show, that was my house. I was married at the time. Set up all the shelves and all that kind of stuff. And it was actually, I mean, the garage itself was kind of tight, but I wanted to show them off and all that kind of stuff. But then through a divorce, I packed up everything and I had all of that stuff in boxes for over a year.
Mhm.
So just recently, I bought a house in December, and I'm a school teacher full time, so I finally have the summer to actually work on house projects and things like that. So one of my first projects was I need to get the museum set back up. I've had all my toys in boxes for over a year, and you kind of forget what you have. So these past couple of weeks I've been going through, but I was like, oh, I remember this thing and I remember this thing. And I'm
Nice.
pulling everything out. So it's kind of like Christmas all over again. So I'm putting it all up and stuff and I'm seeing what I have. And so it's kind of neat when you tear down my first quote unquote museum, and I didn't know what I was doing and stuff. So now that I know I can visualize in my head, here's how I want it. Here's how I want the lights. Here's how I want, where I want stuff. So it's kind of neat how you do so much better your second time around. If you're rebuilding something.
Yeah.
Um, the really cool thing about my collection is anytime I've done events for bigger events, like corporate events type thing, a lot of times they will have Back to the Future stuff, decorations for their booth or whatever it is.
Yeah.
And I've just gotten into the habit of nonchalantly asking, "Hey, what are you guys going to do with all this stuff
Oh, of
when you're
course.
done with the event?" Because I know exactly what they're going to say, and I've been in the right place at the right time. We're just going to throw it away because
Yeah.
it costs them more to ship it back to wherever it came from, or nobody's a fanatic like I am when it comes to it's like, oh well, we could just. So I've always just collected posters, and what I have in the collection is a huge DeLorean time machine, printed on a big, like all these big panels, like 8 foot tall panels.
Yeah.
And so that I put that in the museum as the
I saw that.
backdrop,
I saw that in
and
the
then the
photos.
clock
Yeah.
tower, the clock tower was the same thing. I did this really cool event and they did this Back to the Future themed in Las Vegas. And I got a clock tower out of it. It's like, oh, we were just going to throw this in the dumpster. And I said, no, you're not. I will take it from you. So I had that stored for a very long time, just waiting for the right time and space, to put it in. So
And
now,
now with version 2 of the
version
museum,
2, it like
yeah,
I knew exactly how I wanted it set up and all that kind of stuff. So it's kind of neat. Like when you're in this field of people find it's kind of like you have friends out there that know like, oh, that has a Batman symbol on it. JD will probably like this,
yeah,
and they'll
yeah.
send it your way. So it's kind of neat. So I don't know. Another man's trash is a what's I was to say? Another man's
Another
trash is
another man's treasure.
treasure. Something. Yeah,
Yes,
yeah. So
yeah.
I've got
Um,
lots of treasures.
is there an item that has eluded your collection? Look, most collectors don't get to collect something like a DeLorean. I mean, that is probably the grail of most Back to the Future collectors would be a DeLorean. But is there something else that is a grail item that you would love to have for your set?
I have always wanted the Back to the Future arcade. I've seen
Ah,
them out there. Every once in a while they pop up for sale, and it's like I am not. I don't. Sorry, it's like it's well 4th of July is tomorrow, so people are starting to set off fireworks. I don't know if I'm
That's
not
okay.
actually on under fire over here. Um, but I've seen them for sale, and that would be a cool item to own, but I'm not I'm not in a financial space to be like, yeah, sure, I'll give you $16,000 for that thing, but that would be a really cool thing to have. So, I know they're out there. I've seen them, every once in a while somebody will post one for sale or something like that. But
If I had more space in the Batcave, I probably would love to have a couple of like the pinball machines and car game as well. It looks like sitting in like the Daytona, if you know the Daytona video games where you sit in the cars. There's one of those as well
okay,
that I've seen. But specifically the pinball machines, I'd love to have a larger Batcave area one day set up and have a couple of the pinball machines because there's multiple versions of the pinballs that have come out with different movies as well. So
sure.
I'd love to have that and have my own little space like that as well. So tell me a bit more about renting the DeLorean. You said you're a teacher as well. Is that something you'd like to do maybe in retirement as your sort of full time job after teaching?
Sure.
And you mentioned you also beforehand you mentioned building a TARDIS to put out the front for a little mini library. We'll talk about that later. But would you like to be doing more events? Is that something you'd like to do as a full time?
I it's funny. I just told this somebody the other day. I said I'm not a morning person, to get to work on time. But if it is a gig that I have to be up at, 4 in the morning, 5 in the morning, whatever, I'm up. I'm ready to go
Yeah,
because I love and it's not about the money so much for me. It's about showing up in the time machine. I just did this graduation party yesterday, and mom hired me. I showed up, and everybody stops, and the kid who graduated, his mouth dropped. That is the best. It's a lot of fun. It's just a lot of fun.
yeah,
So
yeah.
sometimes I've done events where I hardly get any money, and for me, it's just I don't care. I love just showing up and having people enjoy the car because, like I said, it is a time machine. It brings them back to when they were younger, when they made better decisions. And I don't. Lots of people have told me, oh, if I could go back in time, I would do this kind of thing. So I get to hear people's stories about how they could, they lots of regrets, those kind of things. I would choose a different wife, that kind of thing, or I would choose a different path. But I've heard so many different personal stories from just random strangers, just taking the car to get gasoline at the gas station. I've met the most random people. And if you're not a people person, and you get anxiety because you can't talk to strangers, this is not the car for you,
No.
definitely. But with that comes the collection. So I enjoy telling people, oh, you like Back to the Future. Well, here's my card. I have, business cards. Look me up. I'd love to have you guys come over and check out the collection and stuff. And it's a neat way to just for somebody to get out of the house and do something, that kind of thing.
Awesome.
But as far as so when I bought the car at the time, like I said, I was married, and I basically told her, I said, I'm not buying it just to have fun and let it become a paperweight. I could probably, because I am a people person, I love talking to anybody. I said I could probably make a little bit of a side business out of this, and so she trusted me at the time, and I didn't just buy it and drive around and feel cool about myself, but I
You
started
probably did
doing
a little bit
events.
of that, but also you made money.
Well, of course, yes, yes. I mean, but and then I feel that I also do a pretty good Doc Brown impersonation, so that's always a fun thing too. My favorite events
You've
are
said that
sporting
now, so
events.
give me your best Doc Brown.
Oh, when this baby hits 88 miles per hour, my favorite. So I'm not a sports person at all. I really know nothing much about sports. So my favorite events are sporting events because, for example, it was about 2 years ago. I think the local hockey team here, the Minnesota Wilds, they wanted me to bring the car out to the hockey to the arena,
Cool.
and I was dressed also as Doc Brown. So Doc really wasn't a sports guy either. He was a scientist. He was a crazy scientist that was working on a time machine and all this kind of
Hmm.
stuff.
Hmm.
So when people would come out to check out the time machine, I would ask them in my full on Doc character, and I'd say, did they score a field goal yet? Or something like that, trying to connect to hockey people, and they're looking at me like, what the heck is wrong with this guy? But it, my favorite, like I said, I don't know much, so I just throw out words, and it's just fun to meet people. I just recently did an event for a bunch of insurance agents, and there was about 500 insurance. It was a big conference for insurance agents around the state of Minnesota. And I went into this whole spiel about how I tried to, contact my insurance agent, and I wanted them to give me a quote, for this. And my insurance guy comes back and he gives me this quote for insurance on the time machine. And I said it was way higher than I wanted, and finally his name was Bill. And I said, Bill, but I only drive it from time to time. And the faces were so classic, because they would look at you like, is he being serious? Is he in character? What just happened? And you got to enjoy people, because some people take life way too seriously. And here I am in this big white wig, running around like a crazy person with a really cool car that the doors go up, and it's fun. It's a lot of fun, because one day it's not going to be here. One day I'm not going to be able to do all that kind of stuff. So
Yeah. Well, speaking of
get out
time,
and enjoy it.
and time machines, we spoke about this earlier before I started recording. You're wearing Doctor Who TARDIS
my Dr.
t-shirt, and you said
Inspiring.
you're a fan of pretty much all time machines. Tell us about
Yep.
the time machine that you're also building at the moment.
So in my previous marriage, I had a full-on TARDIS that I built, and I created a library out of it, a little free library, but it's the full-size TARDIS. So it was about 8 feet, almost 9 feet tall. Put it outside, and then I would, people could come up to it, open the doors up, and they would get free books and stuff. And then through that, I met another guy that was a big geocacher, and he says, do you think we could put a geocache in this thing? And I said, sure. What's a geocache? I had no idea what that thing was, but him and I actually became really good friends. We're still friends now, and we put this geocache in there, and he took over. He ran the whole website of it, the geocaching website to draw people in, and that was another way for people to come and check out the TARDIS, as well as if people were there and I was outside at the time, I'd say, oh, you like that time machine? Come on and check out this time machine, so they'd come and see the DeLorean time machine. But then when I got divorced, I had to get rid of the thing, and I since then gave it away. Someone they took it, and it needed some love, because it was outside for about 3 years, I think. Minnesota winters are pretty brutal up here, so they've refurbished it. So now it is in someone else's hands. But now I have another one that I'm building, and because now I own a house, and I want it to be kind of the, I still have the geocache. It was really cool. You would go into the TARDIS and you would open it up, and there's all these buttons, and I don't know if you know anything about geocaching, but it's all about clues, trying to figure out clues on how to find the geocache, and it's based on your GPS and all this stuff. And through this new friend of mine, he knew somebody that builds geocaches. So it was all this electronic thing. So he would open it up, and all these lights were blinking and all this. It's very TARDIS-y, I guess. Nice. I don't know if that's a word, but you'd have to figure out the different code, and then the door would pop open. And from what he told me, for the 3 years that it was actually up and running, it became Minnesota's #1 geocaching spot to go to.
So you're trying to recreate that now?
So I want to try to get that back, because I love, when people show up, and no one ever came into the house, no one ever knocked on my front door to bother me. You know what I mean? It wasn't ever a burden like that. But
that's good.
If I did see something, and I also put a camera inside where I can talk to the people that were inside the TARDIS. Because sometimes the actual geocache, the puzzle was kind of tough. So sometimes I would go on to the speaker, and I would say, "This is the TARDIS. Would you like some assistance?" All of a sudden they look up at the camera like the thing is talking to me, and I would pretend like I'm the TARDIS. So then if they actually got it right and they've solved the puzzle, I would tell them, "Well, meet me at the garage door for another viewing of a time machine." And they're like, "Oh, what was this?" So I've met so many different, just random walks of life. It's just fun. I love meeting people. I always say, I don't know why we spend so much money looking for aliens in outer space. Why don't we just look at ourselves? Everyone is so different from each other.
And interesting,
It's such a
yeah.
fun and interesting. It's an adventure to meet
Well,
new
speaking of
people.
figuring things out and clues and the such, there's one thing I do on the podcast for some of my guests, and I have actually made some notes here for you. I do a pop quiz
Uh-oh.
sometimes in regards
Okay.
to the fandom and the things that the people are a fan of and collect.
Okay.
So I've done a little quiz, which I don't think will be too hard for you, honestly. For Back to the
All right.
Future.
Makes me nervous now.
So, are you up for a pop quiz?
Sure.
Sure. Nice.
Bring it.
Okay.
Bring it on. Bring it
All
on.
right. Here we go. So, 5 questions. The first question is Michael J. Fox wasn't actually the first person to play Marty when they first started filming the film. Can you tell
Correct.
me the name of the other actor?
Eric Stoltz.
Eric Stoltz. And there's a
And
really cool YouTube video by a channel called What Culture that does a video 20 things you missed in Back to the Future, and actually got a little bit of the information for this quiz from there. And I love one of the things that they mention in there is that Stoltz actually injured the guy who plays Biff. And one of the reasons he was kicked off the film is because he was too aggressive or something, apparently.
okay. Yeah. And from what I've also heard, that I've heard this from Tom, I can't think of his name right now. Tom, the guy who played Biff, Tom Wilson.
Yeah.
I've heard that in the scene where there's a fist that's thrown
Yes,
at Biff,
it's still Eric
it's
Stoltz in the
actually
movie.
Eric Stoltz's
Yes,
fist,
yes, that's
which
actually that.
I'm curious if he ever gets paid, if he got paid extra for his fist is literally still in the movie. I don't
That's
know
right. Yeah, so
how that
he's
works.
in that bit of the movie. That's
He's
correct.
still in
Yeah,
the movie.
yeah. So speaking about actors and people changing actors, between the first and the second movie, Marty's girlfriend, people may notice, changes a little bit
She
in
does.
that she's actually a completely different person. Do you know the name of the two actresses or actors that
Yeah.
played Jennifer?
So the first movie was Claudia Wells, whom I've actually met. I actually gave her a ride when I used to live in Las Vegas. I gave her a ride in my DeLorean,
Mhm.
and got to meet her, and that was really really cool experience. And part 2 and 3, you see, wow, my mind is completely blank.
Starts with an A.
Adventures in Babysitting, and she was also in The Boys, the series. What did you
Yes.
say? What starts with
Starts with
a?
an E.
Oh, Elizabeth Shue. That's it.
That's correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Ding,
yeah.
ding, ding. Got
Yep.
it right.
In fact, I remember as a kid, I saw that and I was like, wait a minute, you don't know, we didn't have IMDb when we were a kid, and there was no such thing as
Yeah.
Google.
Yeah.
And I remember seeing, going from part 1 to part 2, and it was like, what? That doesn't,
Something
something
different.
happened. What happened? What happened? You don't realize that actors can act and change characters.
Change. That's right.
I always hated that when TV shows would try to slip you that. You're like, oh, we're just going to change the actor and hope nobody notices. No, I am not stupid. I saw.
I like
Yeah,
Elizabeth Shue as
Claudia's
an actress. I'm a fan of a few different things she's in. 2 for 2.
so far.
Let's go. Number
Okay.
3 in Back to the Future 2. Most people know that there was actually another actor
Oh
who
no.
briefly was in there as Elijah Wood, who people know
Oh,
from Lord of the Rings.
sure. Yep.
And people would know him because he's in the 80s cafe scene next to a video game where they actually get a video game working. What's the
It
name
is
of that
Wild
video
Gunman.
game?
Wild Gunman.
Yes,
Yes.
perfect.
Which I actually saw. There was a DeLorean convention, which is, a lot of the DeLorean owners will come together for whatever. And just recently, someone built a real Wild Gunman, and there's a photo around the internet somewhere of Bob Gale, who was one of the writers of Back to the Future, playing Wild Gunman.
Nice.
So that was kind of neat. So yeah, got to use your hands.
And here's another little question 4. This is also I took this from the What Culture video. What company paid $100,000 to be featured in Back to the Future?
The Raisin Company, California Raisins.
Yes, that's correct. Correct.
Yes,
Perfect.
and you see it, and it it was sad because it didn't make much money.
Nope.
That was because back in the day, everybody thought when Reese's Pieces showed up in ET, and everybody's buying Reese's Pieces.
Yeah.
Now every movie that came out after that, hey, let's get our product in, product placement. But yeah, it's in there. It's on a park bench,
Correct.
that the bum, that the
Yeah.
Red, I think his name is Red,
Yeah.
is sitting on, where you
Who
see
is actually
California
played
Raisins.
by a former porn star as well.
Really?
Yeah,
Okay,
so
so I
there's
did not know
actually,
that.
well, this is in the and I do recommend people go and actually check out the What Culture video, as I mentioned, 20 things you missed in Back to the Future. But
Okay.
fantastic little piece of
It's
information.
a porn star.
So he was actually a porn star, and in the background when Marty gets out, you can actually see in the background on the cinema there's a movie called Orgy, um, which is
Oh, in
playing a
$1985.
triple X movie. Um,
That was a
and
real movie?
and the guy who plays the homeless
Gosh,
man, the bum on the park bench, he's actually the porn
that's
star that was in that movie, and also is
okay.
in, I believe, when they go back. Oh, I'm trying to
He's
remember.
in alternate
Yeah,
1985 as
he's
well.
the mayor. He's going running for mayor.
Well, so there's a lot of debate. There's a lot of debate about that, what you just said, because
Oh,
I
really?
always thought that Mayor Red is the same as the bum in 1985.
Yeah,
And I've heard from, I want to say it was actually Bob Gale that came out. Don't quote me, but one of the writers said that was a coincidence. And everyone was like, "What? No, that doesn't make any sense. Why not? He didn't make mayor, or he was the mayor, and then, 30 years later he's a
things
bum in,
went.
in the
Yeah,
same city." So I've heard different stories, but I kind of want to believe that yes, he was the mayor, and then he was, an alcoholic bum on the street in
yeah.
1985.
So California Raisins did pay to be in the movie. They wanted to, and they were meant to be in a couple of different scenes, but they only ended up being just that on the park bench there. So apparently they
Yep.
weren't very happy with
Nobody bought anything. So,
it.
well,
All right, so you're 4 or 4, and last question: the Sports Almanac, I think we're
okay.
all familiar with,
Yep.
um, features two dates. The years what
Oh,
to what?
the last year is 2000.
Mm-hmm.
The first year, what? Well, let me think about this. Now, he went back to 1955 and they tested it in 1955. So I'm going to guess that it was 1950 to 2000.
Ding, 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 ding. Correct.
Yes. Yes.
Yes, there you go. You're perfect. 5 for 5.
All
Nice, Andy.
right.
You know your stuff. Apparently, you've seen Back to the Future or something.
Yep, a few times. It's actually funny when I've taken the car, like, oh yeah, I've seen it a couple times. Meanwhile, like, 400. It's playing in my head all the time, but
Well, look, I've really enjoyed having you on the show. But before you go, I always get people to do a bit of a plug, and definitely you should plug your business but also your socials. So let people know where can they find you and where can they hire a DeLorean.
sure. Well, if you go to rentdelorean.com, we will have a car to you yesterday. So I rent out my car locally, Minnesota, as well as cars all around the country, of the United States. I also know a few people around the world that have DeLorean time machines,
Cool.
that are available for events. But most of my inquiries that come in are for, the United States. So that's rentdelorean.com. You could also find me on Facebook under Rent DeLorean, Instagram Rent DeLorean. I just started playing with TikTok, getting into that world, so you could find me there as Rent DeLorean. What did I say? Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. It's all Rent DeLorean. So if there's a social media, I'm probably on it.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, I
So
definitely think people should go and check that out. Give you a follow on your socials. And yeah, if you want a DeLorean at your next party, or if you want to ever, work out a time to go around and see the museum, then you definitely should get in touch with Andy. So thank you again for being
yes,
on the podcast, on the show. I really enjoyed talking with you today. And if only we could go back in time and do this all over again.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
If you liked the episode, please consider following or subscribing wherever you listen to your podcasts. You can also join me on Instagram at Collecting Heroes, where you can see photos of the collections of the people that I'm talking to, as well as some of my own.